I love Julian and am willing to be the stepmother to his son. But he doesn't love me. He just wants me to take care of his child for him. I helped the child get into an international school. At the entrance ceremony banquet for further education, despite the fact that I had just taken C. Freudini, he forced me to toast. After the banquet, he even asked me to drive his elder brother and sister-in-law home. As a result, there was a car accident. I was disfigured on the spot and lost the sight of one eye. In order to keep him by my side, I bought him a spacious flat with a view of the river. Later, Julian instigated the child to push me off the terrace. Afraid that I wasn't dead, he drove over my body. My parents were so angry that they died. Julian inherited my family property, reconciled with his ex-wife and took his son with him. Since then, he has been traveling all day long, showing off his wealth and his love. I opened my eyes and found myself standing outside the private room. A familiar voice came from inside. Mama is rich. If she's caught for drunk driving, she'll just have to pay a fine at most. Drinking alcohol after taking C. Freudini won't kill her right away. She's even willing to die for me. I touched my intact left eye and finally confirmed that I had been reborn. The waiter gave me a teasing look. I smiled. At this moment I really looked like a clown. Why didn't I realize it in my previous life? Julian was still showing off. She pestered me for 4 years in college, but I never gave her a second glance. Now she can not only marry me but also help me raise my son. Shouldn't she be grateful to me? My stomach churned and I felt so sick that I wanted to vomit. I thought it was probably because of the C. Freudini poisoning. That's exactly why the car accident that ruined me happened in my previous life. Ma, why haven't you gone to pay the bill yet? Julian walked out of the private room and said in a matter-of-fact tone, hurry up and don't forget to send my elder brother and sister-in-law home. Looking at the man who had driven over my body without mercy in my previous life, my teeth chattered. My headache intensified, and I couldn't help covering my forehead. What are you pretending for? You're so hypocritical. Julian said, you're being so evasive about such a small thing, and you still say you love me. Behind him, Ethan, who had just started junior high school, mumbled, Auntie, stop acting up. Today is the first time you've met my relatives. You should behave well. I vaguely remembered that the little brat had said the same thing to me in my previous life. Now that I think about it, it's true that a bad example from the top will be followed by those below. He's been able to manipulate people with PUA just like his father since he was a child. I must have been out of my mind to want to be the stepmother of such a child. You're right. I stared at Julian and said, from now on, I don't love you anymore. The 10 tables for the entrance ceremony banquet, together with the amount AI liquor, cost a total of 106,000 yuan. You pay for it yourself. Julian's eyes flickered slightly, but he still looked indifferent. Are you scaring me? Do you think I can't afford it or what? Don't think you've done some great deed just because you helped my son get into school. With my son's talent he would definitely have been the first in the entrance exam. Asking you to pull some strings was just to give you some face. I was in a hurry to go to the hospital and didn't want to waste time talking to him, so I turned around and left. Julian, your girlfriend seems to be angry. Aren't you going to chase after her and comfort her? Some relatives advised. Julian looked calm. There's no need. She'll definitely buy me a gift and beg for my forgiveness within a day. She's been in love with me for 10 years and finally waited until I got divorced. She doesn't dare to make the slightest mistake at all. After saying that, he took out the supplementary card linked to my credit card and handed it to the waiter. Ethan exclaimed excitedly, this time I want her to give me the latest iPhone, the top of the line one. I was feeling so weak that I simply asked the doorman to call an ambulance for me. After that, I called and directly froze that supplementary card of Julian's. My head was getting heavier and heavier. Before I lost consciousness, I saw Julian's parents, who were blushing and arguing with the hotel manager about something. Julian, on the other hand, sat on the sofa in the lobby as if it had nothing to do with him. He looked completely calm, with his legs crossed. It seemed that he was certain that I would come back and apologize. What a pity. I really want to see the look of that scumbag when he's furious in the end. The next day, in the hospital ward, I opened my eyes and saw my mother crying by the bedside. She was wearing discounted clothes bought from a street stall. The clothes, pants, and shoes together cost less than 100 yuan. She was not even 50 years old, but the face that used to be so beautiful was now full of wrinkles. When she saw that I had woken up, my mother cried even harder. My dear, why are you torturing yourself like this? Remember that in this world, no one is worth doing this for. Remembering how my mother had worked hard and uncomplainingly raised me alone all these years, and how she had wailed after failing to stop me from marrying Julian in my previous life, I felt extremely sad. I reached out to wipe the tears from my mother's face and hugged her tightly. I'm sorry, Mom. I won't do this again. Not far away. Amen in his early 50s was dressed neatly and was wearing a limited edition Rolex on his hand. His eyes were full of pity. My mother turned around and pointed at his nose and shouted, "It's all your fault." If our daughter had had a complete family since she was a child, she wouldn't have felt so empty inside and been so determined to be someone else's stepmother. The man's eyes were red, and his expression became more and more self-reproachful. Just then, my phone rang. It was a voice message from Julian. "Where are you? If you're still alive, accompany my son to school to register this afternoon. That's the most prestigious international school in the province. Don't embarrass my son. Besides, I haven't forgiven you for what happened yesterday. You figure it out yourself." My mother, who had stopped crying, had red eyes again. "Ma," the man said softly, "Julian's son ranked at the bottom in the entrance exam. It was your father who secretly sent someone to inform the school's board of directors and got Julian's son admitted to the best elite class on special terms. One of the directors even gave up his own quota. Your boyfriend should be satisfied now. No need." I looked up at the man whose smile had a hint of flattery and said, "Tell the board of directors that they can give that quota to anyone except Julian's son." There was a look of disappointment in the man's eyes. I felt a twinge of softness in my heart, but my face remained calm. "It has nothing to do with you. I've just seen things clearly. I will never be the stepmother to his son again." I took a taxi and came to the entrance of the international school. I was in such a hurry that I only had time to eat an apple. I saw Julian and his son being surrounded by several of their relatives like stars. "Julian, you really know how to keep a low profile." "Yes. My boss is worth hundreds of millions, but he still couldn't get his son into this international school. If you become successful, don't forget to take care of your family members." In the face of the relatives' flattery, Julian remained calm and agreed one by one. What a hypocritical family. They clearly knew that it was my father who had pulled some strings to get his son into the school, but not a single person mentioned my contribution. Maybe they all thought that I had been completely controlled by Julian, just like in my previous life. I walked over. Julian glanced at me. "You're finally here. You really couldn't even last today. If I had known this, why did you act up last night?" His chubby son held his head high and stretched out his hand to me. "Where's my gift?" When he saw that I had nothing in my hands, the chubby boy's face immediately fell. Julian said, "Last night was the first time you met my family, and you caused such a scene. Do you still want to marry me? Give me a reason." "Why should I forgive you?" I opened my hand and revealed part of the car key. Julian said coldly, "You really have some nerve. Do you think I'll forgive you just because you give me a car? What I want is your attitude." As he spoke, he walked towards me and reached out to take the car key. I dodged his hand. Julian frowned. "What do you mean?" Only then did I say, "You're thinking too much, aren't you? I'm here to get my car back." Beep. I pressed the key, and the Porsche 911 that Julian had driven away last night lit up. The car was a gift from my father when we first met. He had left more than 20 years ago and only found me and my mother half a year ago. Before that, my mother had taken me and moved to a faraway place, and I had always thought that I didn't have a father. My mother hated him for leaving us mother and daughter for his career. Even though he had returned with hundreds of millions of assets, she still hadn't forgiven him. I felt sorry for my mother, but I also understood my father's difficulties. I could only draw a clear line with him on the surface. I didn't usually drive this Porsche, and in the past 6 months, I had always let Julian drive it. Now that I was breaking up with him, of course I had to take the car back. Julian, this car isn't yours, his sister-in-law asked on purpose. His elder brother quickly nudged his wife and whispered, "She's just throwing a tantrum. She'll have to apologize later." Julian sneered. "Bae Portia. So impressive. But who cares?" The way he looked at me was like looking at a stranger. This reminded me of my college days when, as the campus heartthrob, he had been two-timing while being with me. Every time I suspected that he had something going on outside, he would always look at me like this. Cold, disgusted, and disdainful. Coupled with some ambiguous words. Since I had lacked fatherly love since I was a child, I simply couldn't stand this kind of cold violence and PUA. Every time, I would take the initiative to apologize and make up with him. It wasn't until I graduated from college and he married the class belle because she was pregnant that I realized he had betrayed me long ago. Half a year ago, he got divorced and came to me. He knelt down and cried, begging for my forgiveness. He swore to the heavens that he would cherish me. I had just ended a relationship, and I also wanted to make up for the regrets of my youth. So with some hesitation, I agreed. But a dog can't change its nature. Before long he started his old tricks again. He thought he had me completely under his control. But he didn't know that I was no longer the person I used to be. At this moment, Julian smiled. He looked down at me and said, "Nah, it seems you want to break up with me." I couldn't help but laugh. "Didn't I make it clear yesterday, we're breaking up? Whoever doesn't break up is a dog." After saying that, I left Julian, who looked a bit stunned, and walked towards the Porsche. A short and chubby figure blocked my way. Julian's son stretched out his hand to me. "Where's my gift? As long as you give me a gift and make me happy, I'll ask my dad to forgive you." "Oh, I want the latest iPhone, the top configuration." I thought for a moment and threw the remaining Apple core to him. "Here you are." "You're welcome." The chubby boy stared blankly at the Apple core in his hands, and then burst into tears. Julian's elder brother and sister-in-law's expressions changed. "Ma, is this the attitude of a stepmother? You're so mean to the child. If you don't apologize properly, there's no way our family will let you take care of Ethan." I smiled. In my previous life, Julian's son harbored a grudge against me just because I wouldn't let him eat junk food and restricted his use of electronic products. Finally, under Julian's instigation, he pushed me off the terrace. I couldn't get away from such an ungrateful person fast enough. "I suggest you go to the ENT department. I've made it very clear that I won't be his stepmother anymore." Julian said unhurriedly, "You should be more than happy to have such a smart and kind son for free. Are you still being stubborn?" "Exactly. Ethan's admission to the elite class of the international school is enough to prove his excellence," his sister-in-law said shamelessly. Just then, Julian's phone rang. After listening for a few words, his face suddenly changed. "Cancel my son's admission qualification? On what grounds? He ranked last in the entrance exam, at the bottom. How is that possible?" The chubby boy stopped crying and looked very nervous. Julian's relatives were also dumbfounded. Julian put down the phone. "Mama, have you had enough of this nonsense? Fine, as long as you help my son restore his admission qualification and pay for last night's banquet." After a pause, he sighed as if reluctantly and said, "I'll forgive you this time." It was as if he was giving me a great deal of face. Before I could speak, the admissions director of the international school came over. "Miss Emma, where is your talented child? I'll take him to the admission ceremony." Then his gaze fell on Julian's son beside me, and he suddenly understood. "He looks really smart." He stroked the top of the chubby boy's head with a loving expression. Julian's sister-in-law couldn't help laughing and looked at me playfully. You really put on a good act before. Julian shook his head. If you want to win my attention, why play these tricks? The chubby boy glanced at me and said reluctantly, "Fine, I'll forgive you this time." The director was about to take him away. I said, "Director Song, you're mistaken. He was the last in this entrance exam. The child I mentioned isn't him." MF. Julian said unhappily, "I've already said I forgive you. Stop pushing your luck." A taxi stopped at the school gate. My senior Sophia came out with a little girl and greeted me from a distance. I pointed at the little girl. Luna, my senior's daughter, a talented girl who has mastered 3 foreign languages since primary school. The admissions director's eyes lit up. He left the chubby boy and enthusiastically led the little girl into the school. Julian's relatives were all in a panic. Julian gave me a deep look. Who cares about this lousy school? After saying that, he put his arm around the chubby boy and walked back. His elder brother said nervously, "Why don't you say something nice to her? It's too late to apply to other schools, and Ethan will have no school to go to." The chubby boy whimpered, "Dad, I don't want to be laughed at for having no school to attend." Julian looked calm. "Don't worry. Sooner or later, she'll come back and beg me. Losing me is her loss." It's great that you broke up with Julian." Sophia was full of excitement on her face. "I really don't know what got into you to fall in love with such a scumbag. Remember in college, you only ate pickles and porridge every day, and you even sold your blood to save money for Julian. As a result, he used that money to buy gifts for the campus belle and married her before graduating. I thought you were going to throw yourself into the fire again this time, but luckily you came to your senses in time." I smiled. "Don't worry, senior. This time I'm serious. I've never felt so relaxed as I do now. In college, everyone made fun of me. Only senior Sophia kept comforting and encouraging me. In my previous life, when everyone found out that I suddenly had a wealthy father, they all came to curry favor and ask for my help. Only Sophia never asked for anything." A woman dressed in luxury walked in. "Isabella. The former campus belle in college and also Julian's ex-wife. I heard you had a conflict with Julian." Isabella gracefully lit a cigarette in front of me and asked. Sophia frowned. "You're wrong. It's Emma who dumped Julian." "But what's it to you?" Isabella smiled. "How could that be? Emma loves Julian so much, and Julian is so handsome. Now that I've given Julian to you, you should cherish him. So tell me, how are you going to thank me?" Sophia looked at me worriedly, hesitant to speak. I said calmly, "Then why don't you cherish him yourself?" Isabella frowned. "Watch your words. I'm already divorced from him." "Really?" I asked. "Did you transfer a sum of money to him last night to pay for the banquet, a total of 106,000 yuan?" Isabella's face changed suddenly. "Nonsense. I have nothing to do with him anymore. I'm very much in love with my current husband." After saying that, she turned around angrily and left. In my previous life, it wasn't until the end that I found out that Julian and Isabella had been secretly in touch all along. Since college, she had stepped in as a mistress even though she knew I was dating Julian. Later, she got divorced because she latched onto a rich man. But every time she would hypocritically come to me and say that I should be grateful to her for giving Julian to me, and that she would help me win Julian's heart completely. It's ridiculous that I actually fell for her tricks and regarded her as my best friend. I treated her to fancy dinners, went on trips with her, gave her designer handbags, and even let her invest in my father's business. She got a lot of benefits from me. But on the other hand, she kept in touch with Julian and even secretly had affairs with him. After I died, Julian inherited my estate. She also decisively divorced her rich husband, got a large divorce settlement, and got back together with Julian. They made my parents extremely angry. They spent my family's money and led a luxurious life that everyone envied. I was so scared. I really thought you would thank her." Sophia patted her chest and said, "Don't worry. I'm not that stupid. I pulled Sophia into the Porsche and smiled mysteriously. Do you want to know what she and Julian will do next? In my previous life, I lived a life full of sorrow and died a miserable death. In this life, I want to make this unfaithful couple who deceived me so much taste the same bitter pill. On the way to the hotel when Julian and Sophia were having an affair, I asked my father for Isabella's husband's phone number and sent him a message. On the top floor of the hotel, there were some unseemly sounds coming from the guest room. The security guards beside us all blushed. Sophia had already turned on the video recording function on her phone and was very excited. Open the door, I said to the security guard. The security guard hesitated for a moment. This isn't in line with the rules. I called my father. 10 minutes later, the hotel owner came in person and was obsequious to me. Open the door. The door was opened. Sophia and I walked in and saw two naked men and women embracing each other in an extremely shameful position. Isabella shrieked and shrank under the quilt. Julian also looked very panicked. When he saw it was me, he regained his composure. He calmly wrapped a bath towel around himself, lit a cigarette, and then said to me, "Why are you here? Didn't you want to break up with me? Do you regret it so soon?" Sophia was filming and scolding at the same time. Scumbag, adulterous couple. Tell me, how long have you been sneaking around together? None of your business. Julian smiled and looked at me. This is all your fault. If you hadn't deliberately made me angry, this wouldn't have happened. Now you know the pain. This is the price you pay for arguing with me. I looked calm. I had heard such words from him too many times. He stayed up all night, drank, didn't come home at night, and even had affairs with others behind my back. In short, everything was my problem. He was never at fault. And I was never allowed to have any temper. Isabella also reacted and said, "That's right, you're being too unreasonable. I was kind enough to give Julian to you, but not only are you ungrateful to me, you also treated my son like that. What a shameless woman you are." Sophia spat and said, "You two adulterers, it's you who are shameless. I've recorded it all." Julian frowned and said, delete the video and apologize to me. Then I'll pretend that nothing happened, and I'm even willing to take you back." I smiled and said, "Deleting the video won't help. So many people have seen it already." Isabella shouted, "Where are the security guards? Seize their phones immediately. I'm a VIP member of your hotel." The security guards looked at the hotel owner. The hotel owner said inferently, "Sorry, this is their right." Isabella said angrily, "Do you know who my husband is?" The hotel owner said, "I know, but Miss Emma's father is a major shareholder of our hotel. Besides, your husband should be here soon." A look of panic appeared on Isabella's face. Ignoring the presence of so many people, she quickly put on her clothes. Just as she put on her underwear, a gentle-looking middle-aged man walked in, followed by several burly men in black with thick gold chains around their necks. "Isabella, you actually betrayed me." The middle-aged man's eyes were bloodshot. "I provided you with a good life, gave you money to buy bags and go on trips, but you actually dared to cheat on me?" As he spoke, he stepped forward and grabbed Isabella's hair. After a dozen slaps, Isabella's face was bruised and swollen, and her usual noble demeanor was completely gone. The man was still not satisfied. He directly dragged Isabella off the bed and started punching and kicking her. Julian, who had already put on his clothes, tried to sneak out of the room. Sophia quickly blocked his way. "The adulterer is here." The man looked at Julian with a cold face and said, "You dare to mess with my woman? Do you want to die?" "Wait, you're her ex-husband?" Isabella, whose fake facial features had been smashed, took this opportunity to hug the man's leg and cried, "Honey, you've misunderstood me. I didn't betray you at all. It's him. He invited me out on the pretext that our child had difficulties getting into school, and then he drugged me and raped me. Woo, honey, you must believe me. You have to stand up for me." Julian could no longer hold his ground. Isabella's husband was definitely a prominent figure in this city. It would be as easy as stepping on an ant to deal with him. Brother, don't listen to her nonsense. It was clearly she who seduced me. I was forced. Isabella was furious. Bullshit, Julian. Are you even a man? You dare to do it but not admit it? Julian was also anxious. Isabella, you're such a bitch. Even after the divorce, you kept sending me text messages every day. You said your husband was busy with business, and that we could date on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. TSK, you two have such a good relationship. So, Isabella's husband is actually the third party, Sophia said loudly on purpose. The man looked at Julian with a murderous gaze, and his face was as gloomy as water. I watched this scene with great interest. In my previous life, these two unfaithful people kept me in the dark and flirted behind my back. Now, seeing them tearing each other apart and turning on each other, I felt extremely satisfied. You actually dared to drug my wife. You have some guts. Take them all away. Perhaps because his subordinates were there, the middle-aged man didn't expose Isabella on the spot. Only then did Julian finally get anxious. He turned to look for me and said, have you had enough of this? Are you just going to stand by and watch me be framed by this bitch? If you don't stop him, you'll never be able to marry me in this life. My son and I will never forgive you. Wait a minute. Isabella's husband looked at me with a questioning expression. He had been very successful in this city. But my father was one of the richest people in the whole province. Julian, who had been extremely nervous, slowly let out a sigh of relief. A flash of pride appeared in his eyes, and then he regained his composure. I'll let bygones be bygones for what happened before. I'll also speak up for you with my family, including my son. After saying that he sighed. Perhaps in his opinion, this was the greatest concession he could make to me. Sophia's face showed indignation and worry. I smiled. Seeing this, Julian also smiled, still with that superior look. I turned to Isabella's husband and said, why did you stop? I don't know this person at all. Isabella's husband let out a long sigh of relief. I thought Miss Emma had some relationship with him. Sorry, I was overthinking. I smiled gracefully. Don't listen to him. He's probably gone crazy. How could I possibly be with such a cowardly and scumbag man? And be the stepmother to his son? Indeed. What's Miss Emma's status? This man is really good at pretending. After saying that, the middle-aged man's face darkened. Take them all away. Julian looked at me in disbelief. He naturally understood what kind of fate awaited him if he was taken away by Isabella's husband. His face turned gray inch by inch, and fear filled his eyes. Only then did he finally seem to realize that when I said I wanted to break up with him, I wasn't just saying it out of anger. His tricks could no longer control me. There was no longer the slightest possibility that I would become his son's stepmother. Moo! Julian shouted at me with red eyes, you can't live without me. You'll regret it. I swear, you will definitely regret it. I watched as he and Isabella were dragged out of the room, looking as wretched as stray dogs. I felt more comfortable than ever before. In the following days, I spent all my time with my parents and occasionally had afternoon tea with Sophia. Having been reborn, my goal is very simple. To enjoy life. And to take good care of the people around me who once cared about me. Especially my parents, I really want them to reconcile. But I also know that I have no right to forgive my father on behalf of my mother. Although my mother still hasn't forgiven my father and still refuses to accept the house and car that my father bought for her. But fortunately, she is no longer opposed to my father coming to our house, and they sometimes even have a meal together. However, she still looks worried sometimes. I asked her why she was unhappy, but she never told me. Until one night, I woke up in the middle of the night and saw my mother sobbing on the balcony. Mom, why are you crying? I quickly went over and put a coat on my mother. When my mother saw me, she burst into tears. Baby, I just had a nightmare. I dreamed that you married that Julian and became the stepmother to his child. but both he and his son treated you badly. They ate your food, used your things, and spent your money, but they still gave you a hard time every day and bossed you around. You were very unhappy, but you still loved that man. However, one day, you were killed by that cruel father and son. Mom, stop talking. I hugged my mother tightly, and tears streamed down my face uncontrollably. My mother actually dreamed about what happened to me in my previous life. They say that mothers and daughters have a special connection, but in both my previous life and this life, I have never made my mother worry-free. Mom, don't worry. In this life, the next life, and the life after that, I will have nothing to do with that father and son, I said firmly. Really? My mother wiped away her tears and forced a smile on her face. I hope you can keep your promise. Although she said that, I could feel that my mother still wasn't completely at ease. Early the next morning, as soon as I woke up, I received a call from Sophia. Something's wrong. I asked, what's the matter? Sophia said, Julian's son committed suicide, and it's even on the trending news. He left a suicide note saying that it was all because of you, the cruel stepmother. I opened my phone. The news about Julian's son's suicide had already become a hot topic. The headline, The ungrateful stepmother despises the poor and loves the rich, causing her husband to mutilate himself and her stepson to commit suicide. Is Julian disabled? I asked. Sophia, yeah, haven't you been paying attention? Julian was taken away that day and was only released 3 days later. He was half dead, and his left eye was also blinded. He lost his job and is being chased by loan sharks for debt. I smiled. He's reaping what he sowed. He deserves it. What about Isabella? Sophia said, she wasn't beaten again because she had already been beaten before. Her rich husband divorced her, and since she was at fault, she didn't get anything. Her husband is also a ruthless person. He set a trap for her in the prenuptial agreement. Now that she cheated and got divorced, the compensation she has to pay is an astronomical figure. I asked, so, are they colluding with each other again? Sophia laughed. Mandalb Isabella has disappeared. She probably doesn't have the face to stay here anymore. But Emma, Julian's video distorts the truth, and many people on the internet are scolding you. You should explain it quickly. In the video, Julian, who only had one eye left, was shouting hoarsely and accusing me. He said that my family was very poor, and he had been supporting me financially and emotionally during my college years. As a result, I betrayed him later and got together with another man. He was so disheartened that he married his ex-wife. Just half a year ago, I kept sending him text messages and calling him, which caused family conflicts and led to his ex-wife divorcing him. After that, I took advantage of the situation and deceived his kind son. For the sake of his son, he had no choice but to be with me. However, not long after, my wealthy father found me, and I became a wealthy and beautiful woman. Gradually, I looked down on him. He was also willing to break up with me, but unexpectedly, I took revenge on him. I not only humiliated him in public but also used my connections to deprive his talented son of the qualification to attend a prestigious school. Moreover, I hired people to illegally put him under house arrest, which disabled him and caused him to lose his job. His son suffered from depression because of this and attempted to commit suicide by cutting his wrists. Fortunately, he was discovered in time, and his life was saved. At the end of the video were photos of his son's cut wrists and a suicide note. In the suicide note, his son's accusations against me were full of words. He described me as a vicious stepmother who seemed kind on the surface but abused him secretly all day long. In addition to the video posted by Julian, his elder brother, sister-in-law, and other relatives also posted videos, tearfully condemning my immorality. They even showed the chat records of me flattering him before. This further confirmed my malicious intentions. The comment section was filled with scolding. Especially after learning that I was the daughter of so-and-so, netizens who didn't know the truth pointed their fingers at my father's group. In just one day, the stock price had dropped by several points. This Julian is extremely hypocritical and insidious. Sophia cursed and then comforted me, but don't worry, Emma. I've already contacted our former classmates and teachers, and they've all agreed to testify for you. Back in school, it was always Julian who bullied and deceived you. Thank you, Senior. I'm not afraid at all. He's just cornered now. I calmly hung up the phone. Just then, Julian called. Ma, this is what you owe me. You made me disabled, lost my job, and now I'm being chased by loan sharks for debt. I also want to ruin you and make you lose everything. Unless you compensate me with a sum of money. I said, as expected, this is your true intention. How much do you want? Julian, 1 billion. If you don't give it, your father's group will go bankrupt soon. I smiled. Julian, you really won't shed tears until you see the coffin. After saying that, I hung up the phone. Not far away, my mother looked at me with red eyes, full of worry. I smiled and said, Mom, don't worry. Just watch. I'll have a complete break with him soon. That night, my father didn't come home. Perhaps because the group's stock price was affected, he was busy dealing with public opinion. Even so, he still found time to call me and told me it was okay. He said that he would take care of everything and told me not to be angry because of that scumbag. At this time, on the internet, my former classmates, teachers, and some friends who knew my situation all stood up to clear my name. They posted videos and wrote posts, telling the whole story of how I had given so much for Julian, but was betrayed and emotionally manipulated by him. The principal of the international school also posted a video personally, announcing the bottom-ranked score of Julian's son in the entrance exam. The primary school teacher of Julian's son also exposed on the internet the naughty and overbearing behavior of him bullying classmates and acting like a king in his daily life. The stock price of my father's group finally stopped falling. Many voices of support for me also appeared on the internet. However, there were still many netizens who said that it was because my father was using his financial power to try to cover up my dark past. Ma, I'm giving you one last chance. As long as you get back together with me and flatter me like you used to, I'll delete the video and let bygones be bygones. This will be good for both of us. Julian said triumphantly on the phone. Really? But I don't want to give you any more chances. After saying that, I hung up on him and then dialed the number of a private detective. Have you found out where she is? Okay, keep an eye on her and don't let anyone get close to her. Early in the morning, I was woken up by the noise downstairs. I opened the window and saw a crowd of people, 3 layers inside and 3 layers outside. In the middle were Julian, his son, and his relatives. There were also a group of reporters around. Muma is an ungrateful person. She not only ruined my marriage and hurt my son but also tried to smear me. My family and I are the real victims. Everything she has done was initially to emotionally manipulate me, trying to make me change my mind and be with her and become her puppet. I never fell for it, so she took revenge on me. Poor my wife Isabella, who is still missing. Julian was crying out his misfortunes loudly. His son pretended to wipe his tears, cooperating with his father. The crowd was influenced by him and began to loudly accuse me. Even the reporters were incited by him. No, you're talking nonsense and distorting the truth. My daughter is innocent. The really vicious person is you. My mother cried and stepped forward, trying to interrupt, but was pushed aside by the crowd. At this time, I had already run downstairs and quickly helped my mother, who was crying uncontrollably. A porter held a microphone and asked me aggressively, Miss Emma, what do you have to say in your defense now? Nothing. As soon as I finished speaking, the crowd immediately became angry. I then said, however, if you want to know the truth, come with me to a place. After that, I took my mother and got in the car. The reporters, along with Julian and the others, followed closely behind. More than 20 minutes later, I drove to the garage of an old residential area. This was the old house of Julian's parents. In my previous life, I had spent a dark and hopeless time in this garage. Open the door. I said to the private detective who had been waiting there. Wait a minute. Julian, who had just gotten out of the reporter's car, shouted urgently, "Who gave you the right to break into a private house? This is illegal." The crowd and the reporters remained unmoved. They were obviously very curious about the truth I mentioned. But I could see the fear and unease in Julian at this moment. "Open the door." At my command, the private detective pried open the roller shutter door of the garage. In the dimly lit garage, a woman in ragged clothes and looking extremely haggard was tied up with ropes behind her back. When she saw the garage door open, she screamed and stumbled out. Her face was exposed to the sunlight. Buzz, the crowd was in an uproar. Julian's father-in-law and mother-in-law even started crying. "Isabella, my daughter, why are you locked up here? Who is it? Who on earth did this? Ma, you're simply insane." At this time, Isabella saw Julian, who was trying to run away. Her red eyes flashed with a fierce light as if she wanted to eat him alive. "It's not Emma, it's him, it's my ex-husband Julian. He kidnapped and imprisoned me. Julian, this hypocritical and vicious man. I'm going to expose your true face today." Next, amidst Isabella's hoarse shouts, the truth finally came to light. After Isabella and Julian were discovered by her husband while they were together, her husband kicked her out of the house. She not only lost her wealth but also had to pay her husband a large sum of money. She went to Julian, and the two decided to stage a play, that is, to distort the truth and slander me, forcing me to give in so that they could extort money from my wealthy father. But she didn't expect that what Julian really wanted was not just the money. He also wanted to be with me again. After discovering this, she had a big fight with Julian, and as a result, she was tied up by Julian and imprisoned in the garage. The reason why I could guess the truth about Isabella's disappearance was that in my previous life, when I found out that Julian and Isabella were secretly dating and wanted to leave, I was also locked in the garage. I was wrong. Julian fell to his knees in front of me with a thud, tears streaming down his face. He hugged my leg and wailed, "I did all of this for you. I love you. I know you still love me, and you'll help me sort all this out, right? Let's get back together. I'll treat you well from now on. I can give up my ex-wife, my child, and my family. I only want you." I looked down at Julian, who was full of flattery, and kicked him away. But I don't need a scumbag who tries to murder for money. Whether in my previous life or this life, you, Julian, don't deserve me. The police car came and took away Julian, who looked desperate. In the crowd, the chubby boy burst into tears. He probably didn't expect that his father would do such a thing to his biological mother. However, no one paid attention to him, and soon everyone left, including his crazy and deranged biological mother. After that day, I restored my reputation, and the stock price of my father's group even soared because of this. My mother was extremely happy. This time she finally felt completely at ease. She forgave my father, and the two of them held a wedding again. A few years later, my father retired and took my mother on a trip around the world. I inherited my father's group, became a famous strong woman in business, and had a happy marriage. My husband's family is of equal social status to mine. He is very gentle and treats me extremely well. Soon, we had our own child, a lovely and kind daughter. One morning, after I got up, my daughter was practicing the piano, and my husband was scrolling through his phone beside her. How could there be such a father and son in the world? He pointed at a piece of news and said to me, as soon as the father was released from prison, his son blinded him. The father became completely blind and ended up begging on the streets. The son was sentenced to 20 years in prison. By the time he gets out, he will probably find it hard to reintegrate into society, and his whole life will be ruined. I glanced at the two familiar names in the news and smiled. Don't meddle in the affairs of these irrelevant people. In short, as long as our family is happy, that's all that matters. My husband put down his phone and gently kissed my forehead. Yeah, as long as my wife is happy, that's enough. Isabella, who has been reborn, is shocked to find that her memories have become a sharp blade for revenge. In her previous life, she was manipulated by James. Now, she is repaying him in kind. She splashed wine on him in the bar to humiliate him and hit him where it hurts. In the capital battlefield, she joined hands with William. They targeted James Group's financial report with a pen, starting a mirror-like counterattack. To save her child, she faced a choice of a soul transaction in an abandoned church. I was reborn, and the bar in front of me is a memory that haunted me and made me toss and turn in my previous life. Looking at the signabird in front of me, all I have is a deep-seated hatred for James. This hatred follows me like a shadow and constantly burns my heart. On every sleepless night, the deception and harm he inflicted on me in the past are like sharp needles, stabbing my nerves repeatedly. James, this name is now the only goal on my path of revenge. I resolutely stepped into the bar, and the noisy voices and music instantly enveloped me. But in my eyes, there was only that familiar and disgusting figure. James was surrounded by a group of heavily made-up women and was talking inimitedly. That complacent look was exactly the same as when he deceived me in my previous life. I clenched my fist tightly, my nails digging deep into my palms, and my heart kept shouting. It's him, this hypocritical man who shattered my life into pieces. In this life, I will definitely make him pay for what he has done. I suppressed the surging anger in my heart and admonished myself, impulse will only ruin things. Stay calm. I took a deep breath and tried to make my steps look steady as I walked towards him step by step. With each step closer, my heart beat faster, a throbbing mixture of anger and anticipation. James, long time no see, I said. Even though I had rehearsed it countless times in my mind. But when I really faced him, my voice involuntarily carried a thick layer of mockery. When he heard my voice, his movements suddenly froze, and his originally endless stream of words stopped abruptly. He slowly turned his head, and the moment our eyes met, I clearly caught the flash of panic in his eyes. But after all, he was an old hand who had been through the business world and the world of love for many years. In the blink of an eye, the trace of panic was cleverly concealed by him. He put on that signature cynical smile and said, Isabella, what a coincidence to meet you here. Coincidence? James, do you think I would believe your excuse? I snorted coldly in my heart, but my face remained expressionless as I continued to look at him coldly. The eyes of the people around us turned towards us, and they seemed to sense an unusual atmosphere. And the women around him also began to whisper to each other, looking at me with curious and somewhat scrutinizing eyes. Looking at his extremely hypocritical face, I could no longer suppress the anger in my heart, and my reason was instantly overwhelmed by hatred. My hand quickly reached for the red wine glass on the table, and my 5 fingers tightly grasped the glass body. At that moment, I felt that what I was holding in my hand was not a wine glass, but a sharp blade that could pierce his heart. Then, I used all my strength to splash the glass of red wine at him. The red wine traced a beautiful arc in the air and landed precisely on his expensive custom-made suit, instantly spreading out. It was like a blooming blood-colored flower, symbolizing his ugly soul that was about to be exposed. James, your act of playing the hero to save the beauty is not as pleasant as the screams when your mother was being beaten. I stared fixedly into his eyes and said word by word. Each word seemed to carry the pain and hatred of my previous life, squeezed out from between my teeth. As soon as I said these words, it suddenly became quiet around us. Everyone was too shocked by my words to say anything. His face instantly turned as pale as paper, and the originally confident look in his eyes was now filled with panic and anger. His lips trembled slightly, as if he wanted to say something to refute, but he was at a loss for words. He could only stammer out a few words. You, what nonsense are you talking about? His eyes began to dodge, and he didn't dare to meet my gaze, which further confirmed that my words had hit the mark. I ignored his reaction and my eyes fell on the inner pocket of his suit that was soaked with red wine. Sure enough, a corner of a forged jade pendant was revealed. At the sight of that familiar jade pendant, the memories of my previous life flooded over me like a surging tide. How naive and stupid I was back then. What ancestral jade pendant, he proposed to me with a loving face. I actually thought I had found the happiness of my life and fell headlong into the lie trap he had carefully woven without hesitation. What, James, this jade pendant looks familiar, right? Where's the treasure you used to deceive me? I said mockingly, the corner of my mouth curling into a cold sneer, and my eyes full of contempt for him. His lips trembled even more violently, and fine beads of sweat broke out on his forehead. He looked completely embarrassed. The people around began to whisper and the sound of pointing fingers was endless. And at that moment, I felt an unprecedented sense of pleasure in my heart. I knew that this was just the first step of my revenge, and there were more severe challenges waiting for me ahead. But at least today I successfully tore off one of his masks. I no longer looked at him and turned around and left resolutely. I straightened my back and walked firmly, each step steady and powerful. Behind me came the sounds of people's exclamations and whispers. I knew that he was now facing the strange looks around him alone. James, this is just the beginning. You just wait. I will make you pay for what you have done. I secretly swore in my heart, and the fire of revenge burned even more fiercely in my heart. Dragging my exhausted body, I walked in a daze and somehow ended up in front of a clinic. Looking at that signabird, I seemed to be under a freezing spell, and my feet couldn't move an inch. The nightmare of my previous life instantly flooded over me like a tide. Why did I come here again? Is this fate playing a trick on me? I murmured bitterly in my heart, but my legs uncontrollably stepped into the clinic. The pungent smell of disinfectant rushed towards me and instantly penetrated my nostrils, making me feel nauseous. Doctor, I want to have an abortion. My voice was hoarse, as if it was forced out of my throat. The doctor looked up, his eyes with a trace of scrutiny. Probably seeing that I was not in a good state, he asked softly, "Young lady, are you sure? This is not a trivial matter. Think about it again." I gritted my teeth, my mind blank, and replied instinctively, "Sure. I want to get rid of this baby." The doctor sighed helplessly and asked me to go for an examination first. I mechanically walked towards the examination room, each step as heavy as if I was dragging a 1,000-pound burden. Lying on that cold examination bed, I stared at the ceiling with empty eyes. Why has my life become like this? How could I be so stupid to be deceived by James again and again? This child will also suffer if it is born. It's better too. My thoughts were in a mess, and my heart was filled with despair. The doctor pushed in the ultrasound machine and started to examine me. When the probe moved on my abdomen, a faint spot suddenly appeared on the screen. Then, a rhythmic fetal heartbeat sounded in my ears. That sound, although faint, was like a thunderclap exploding in my heart filled with deathly stillness. Is this the baby's heartbeat? I murmured to myself, my eyes fixed on the screen, and tears welled up in my eyes uncontrollably. At that moment, the regret of my previous life and the entanglement of the moment collided violently in my heart. I seemed to see the child I had abandoned with my own hands in my previous life, looking at me with a wronged face, and looking at this little life that I had not yet met but had a strong vitality. "Young lady, look, the baby is developing well. Such a healthy little life, are you really willing to give it up?" The doctor's words interrupted my thoughts. I opened my mouth, but found that my throat was blocked, and I couldn't say a word. Nada, I can't make the same mistake again. I have already committed an unforgivable mistake in my previous life. In this life, I can't repeat the same mistakes. I shouted in my heart and clenched my hands into fists tightly. "Doctor, I don't want an abortion anymore." I suddenly sat up, and my firm tone even surprised myself. The doctor was taken aback for a moment, then smiled with relief. "Good, that's right. Baby, Mom won't abandon you again. We will face the future together. No matter how difficult it is, Mom will be with you." I gently stroked my belly and said softly. Leaving the clinic, I took a deep breath and felt as if I had been reborn. This child is my hope after being reborn. I will, for his sake and for my own, bravely move forward. I will seek justice from James, and get back what belongs to me. After coming out of the clinic, my heart was filled with confusion about the future, and my steps unconsciously led me to that familiar yet unfamiliar street. As I walked, an old bookstore came into view, as if it were a direction specially guided by fate for me. I'm going to take revenge on James Group, I thought silently in my heart and stepped into the bookstore. The unique smell of old paper filled the store. I casually wandered among the bookshelves, my eyes quickly scanning through the yellowed books one by one. James Group, where on earth are your weaknesses hidden? I murmured in a low voice. With each book I flipped through, my anticipation grew a little more, but so did my disappointment. Suddenly, a financial magazine caught my eye. I reached out and took it down. When I casually flipped through it, the circled item Smart Orphanage Project immediately grabbed my attention. What is this? My heart rate suddenly quickened, and my intuition told me that this might be the key I had been looking for. I couldn't wait to read the relevant content carefully. The more I read, the more excited I became, and my hands trembled slightly with excitement. So that's it. This is the fuse that will cause James Group to collapse in 3 years. I shouted in my heart. Finally, I had found the lethal weapon that could bring them down. Boss, I'll take this magazine, I said as I walked towards the cashier with the magazine, my voice trembling a little with excitement. The boss looked up at me, took the magazine, scanned the price, and said, 10 yuan. I quickly took out the money and handed it over, as if I was afraid that this life-saving straw would fly away. After walking out of the bookstore, I stood on the street corner and opened the magazine again. My fingers gently ran across the circled project. James Group, your good days are over, I said through gritted teeth, and in my mind, the images of the children who had been abused in the orphanage in my previous life emerged. Their screams seemed to ring in my ears again. This fire is the judgment of your sins, I murmured to myself, my eyes shining with a determined light. Suddenly, a yellowed business card fell to the ground. I picked up the business card, and it read William's private banking advisor card. William? Suddenly, it occurred to me that in my previous life, someone had been suing James Group over bonds, and it seemed to be William. A series of images flashed through my mind. But I knew that this was by no means a coincidence. Since fate had made me come across this business card, there must be a reason for it. I carefully put away the business card and secretly swore in my heart that I would make good use of this clue. James, you just wait. The real revenge has just begun. I will use your own methods to completely crush you. I looked in the direction of the James Group building, my gaze as firm as iron and my steps became even more powerful. I strode forward on my path of revenge. I contacted William on the business card and made an appointment to meet him in the afternoon. As I walked into that conference room that would determine my fate, my heart suddenly tightened, as if it was being gripped by an invisible big hand. This negotiation with William was crucial to the success or failure of my revenge plan, and there could be no room for error. Must stay calm, I encouraged myself in my heart, straightened my back, and tried my best to look calm and composed. William was already sitting across the negotiation table. His expression was stern, and his eyes were as sharp as a falcon's, as if he could see through my thoughts. I took a deep breath and spoke first. General Manager William, I've made this appointment with you today because I want to talk about James Group. My voice was still relatively steady, but only I knew that my heart was beating extremely fast. William slightly raised his eyebrows, and a faint smile played on his lips. Oh? Miss Isabella seems to be quite concerned about James Group. But why should I cooperate with you? His tone carried a hint of playfulness, as if he was testing me. I looked directly into his eyes without flinching. General Manager William, which do you think is more valuable, your claim against James Group or my hatred for him? You're in business, so you should know that by cooperating with me, you can recover your funds more quickly and also strike at your competitor. As I spoke, I was calculating in my heart that I had to persuade him. William was silent for a moment, his fingers gently tapping on the table, making a rhythmic sound, as if he was weighing the pros and cons. You're quite straightforward. But why should I believe that you have the ability to do this? His gaze locked onto me tightly, as if he wanted to find the answer from my expression. General Manager William, I not only have evidence of James Group's crimes, but also know their fatal business loopholes. You must have heard of the Smart Orphanage Project. This is the fuse that will cause James Group to collapse in 3 years. I can help you maximize the benefits of your claim while making James Group pay a heavy price. I detailed my bargaining chips, hoping to impress him. A flash of surprise crossed William's eyes. Obviously, he didn't expect me to know so much about the situation. It seems that Miss Isabella has done a lot of homework. He paused and then continued, but what about the cooperation terms? I just want James Group to be completely brought down and your support at the critical moment, I answered firmly. William looked at me in silence, his expression gradually becoming serious. In that case, a pleasant cooperation. He held out his hand, and I didn't hesitate to shake it. James, you just wait. Your doom is coming, I murmured in my heart, and the fire of revenge burned even more fiercely. Standing on the stage of the press conference, with the spotlight shining on me, my heart was filled with nothing but determination. Today, I'm going to expose James' despicable deeds to the world, I said to myself in my heart. I clenched my hand slightly, my nails digging into my palms, but I didn't feel any pain at all. The audience in the audience were whispering to each other, their eyes filled with curiosity and anticipation. I took a deep breath and said into the microphone, "Everyone, today I'm going to reveal an astonishing truth." My voice echoed in the spacious venue, and the scene instantly fell silent. With the issuance of the instruction, the holographic projection equipment was activated, and the surveillance footage of the orphanage of James Group appeared before everyone's eyes. Those scenes of children being abused, their pained expressions, and their mournful cries were clearly presented in the field of vision of every audience member through the AR glasses. Look, everyone. This is the true face of the orphanage of James Group. I shouted loudly, my voice filled with anger and accusation. There was an uproar in the audience. People began to talk among themselves, their faces showing expressions of shock and anger. How could this be? It's too much. How could James Group do such a thing? Various voices sounded one after another. I knew that James must be able to see this press conference at this moment. I looked towards the camera, and my gaze seemed to be able to penetrate the screen and reach deep into his heart. James, do you think you can cover up your crimes with money? My voice rose several decibels, and every word was like a bullet shooting towards James. Just then, the screen suddenly switched, and it became the surveillance footage of his mother being beaten. That familiar scene and the familiar screams made the atmosphere at the scene reach a climax instantly. James, this is the secret you've been hiding. This is the true face of your so-called upper-class society, I continued. You think you can escape legal sanctions and the condemnation of your conscience? Today, I'm going to make you lose everything and be disgraced. The audience in the audience began to condemn James Group one after another, and some people even shouted the slogan "Punish James Group severely." I looked at all this, and a sense of accomplishment welled up in my heart. James, this is just the beginning. Your doom has arrived, I said silently in my heart, and a victorious smile appeared on my face. This public opinion storm would become a powerful weapon on my path of revenge, making James Group head towards destruction amidst the scorn of the public. The rain was pouring down in sheets, and the big raindrops hit my body, causing a sharp pain. But my heart ached even more. James had gone crazy and destroyed the orphanage. I rushed into the crumbling orphanage with only one thought in my mind, to save the children. I can't let them be hurt anymore, I roared in my heart. The rain blurred my eyes, but it couldn't stop me from moving forward. Suddenly, I heard the cry of a child coming from the corner. I ran towards the sound and saw a little girl trapped under the ruins, looking terrified. Don't be afraid, Sister is here to save you, I shouted loudly and reached out to move the debris pressing on her. Just then, the steel bar fell from above and stabbed straight into my arm. Blood gushed out instantly. Under the stour of the rain, it flowed down my arm. Sizzle. I drew in a breath of cold air, yet I didn't halt my movements. I gritted my teeth and continued to rescue her. Finally, the little girl was rescued. I held her in my arms and was about to run out. At this moment, a figure appeared in front of me. It was William. He looked at my bleeding arm, frowned tightly, and without saying a word, took off his suit and quickly wrapped it around my wound. Are you crazy? It's so dangerous, and you still rushed in. There was a hint of anxiety in his voice. I gasped for breath and said, the children are more important. I can't just stand by and watch something happen to them. The rainwater slid down my cheeks, mixing with my tears. William looked at me, and a complex emotion flashed in his eyes, with both admiration and a touch of heartache. You are more like a savior than I am, he said softly, and his voice was particularly clear amidst the sound of the rain. I was stunned. I didn't expect him to say that. Before this, I had always thought that we were just collaborating for our common interest to bring down James' group. But at this moment, I seemed to see a different side of him deep in his heart. I just did what I had to do. I stammered, and my heart started beating inexplicably faster. I didn't know if it was because of nervousness or something else. William didn't say anything more. He took the child from my arms and walked out of the orphanage with me. Among the ruins, a corner of the piano keys was exposed. Blood droplets fell on the piano keys. Under the wash of the rainwater, they formed irregular shapes, yet they seemed to be symbols of redemption. This piano has carried the dreams of so many children, I murmured as I looked at the piano keys. William also looked at the piano keys and nodded thoughtfully. This rescue on the rainy night seemed to be an arrangement of fate, causing the relationship between William and me to change subtly. In this chaotic world, we were no longer just business partners. We were more like saviors in each other's lives. We would search for the light together in the darkness and move towards a new life. The moment I stepped into that abandoned church, a chill shot up from the soles of my feet to my heart. The church was filled with the smell of decay and antiquity. It was as if time had stood still here, leaving only endless silence. I took a deep breath, trying my best to calm myself down, and kept muttering in my heart, for the sake of those children, I must hold on. James was already waiting there. That disgusting triumphant smile was on his face, and beside him were the trembling children. When I saw them, my heart clenched suddenly. Those innocent faces were filled with fear, like innocent lambs that had fallen into the trap of a wolf. Isabella, you're finally here, James said, and his voice echoed in the empty church, carrying a hint of mockery. I stared at him fiercely and said through gritted teeth, James, let those children go and come at me. But he just smiled dismissively, come at you, how boring. I'll give you a choice. Use the evidence in your hand and your life to exchange for these children. Which one will you choose? There was a trace of madness in his eyes, as if he was enjoying an interesting game. My heart shook. The evidence and my life were what I relied on for my revenge, and they were the source of my strength to stand up again in this life. Without it, how could I completely bring down James' group and seek justice for myself and my previous life and those victims? However, looking at these children in front of me, their lives were equally precious, and they shouldn't become the victims of this struggle. I shouted in my heart, these children are so innocent, and how can I give up my revenge halfway? I was caught in a dilemma, and my heart felt as if it was being pricked by thousands of needles, suffering immensely. Why are you hesitating? Seeing this, James continued. You've always regarded yourself as a just person, haven't you? Now you can't even save a few children. What's the point of talking about revenge and justice? His words were like sharp knives, piercing my heart. I opened my mouth, but found that my throat was so dry that I couldn't make a sound. I kept weighing the options in my heart, and every thought was like tearing my own soul apart. On one hand, there were the lives of the children, which were vivid and in urgent need of rescue. On the other hand, there was my revenge, which was the belief I had obtained through countless days and nights of pain and struggle. James, why are you doing this? I asked angrily, trying to stall for time and find a turning point. Why? He laughed maniacally. Because you've ruined my plans. You made me lose face in front of everyone, and I want you to die. There was full of hatred and distortion in his eyes. Just when I was almost consumed by despair, I suddenly thought of William. He had said that no matter when, he would stand by my side. William, where are you? Come and save these children quickly, I prayed silently in my heart. As if he had heard my call, there was a slight noise outside the church. James heard it too. His face changed slightly, and he looked around warily. It seems that your reinforcement is here, he sneered. But before they come in, you'd better make a decision quickly. As he spoke, he took out a dagger from his pocket and pressed it against a child's neck. No, I exclaimed, my heart rising to my throat. Okay, I promise you. I'll exchange the evidence in my hand for the safety of the children. I almost shouted these words out with all my strength. James smiled with satisfaction. It would have been better if you had done this earlier. He took out a share transfer agreement and threw it in front of me. Sign it, transfer all the materials to me, and then, you know what I mean. I picked up the pen, trembling. Looking at that agreement, my heart was filled with unwillingness. Is all my effort going to be in vain? Is my revenge going to end like this? I asked myself in my heart. But looking at the terrified eyes of the child, I knew that I had no other choice. Just when I was about to sign it, the door of the church was suddenly crashed open and William rushed in with his men. James, let those children go, William shouted loudly, and his voice was full of authority. When James saw this, a trace of panic appeared on his face, but he quickly regained his composure. William, you're just in time. No one is going to get out of here alive today, he threatened, waving the dagger. You can't escape, James. William approached him step by step. Put down the weapon and surrender. Surrender? James laughed maniacally. James, would rather die than surrender. There was a trace of determination in his eyes. Just when the two sides were at a standstill, I suddenly saw an opportunity. While James was distracted, I quickly rushed forward, snatched the dagger from his hand, and protected the child behind me. James, your scheme won't succeed, I shouted loudly. James flew into a rage and pounced towards me. Just then, William's men quickly fired and shot James in the arm. He let out a scream and fell to the ground. Quick, take the children out, William shouted. His men quickly took action and safely transferred the children. I walked up to James. Looking at his bedraggled appearance, I didn't feel any sense of pleasure in my heart. James, you've lost, I said coldly. He looked up at me, and his eyes were full of resentment. Isabella, don't be too complacent. Even if I lose, you won't end well either. I ignored him and turned to walk towards William. Thank you for coming in time, I said gratefully. William looked at me, and his eyes were full of concern. It's good that you're okay, he gently patted me on the shoulder. This thrilling soul transaction finally ended with James' defeat. The struggle at that moment of life and death choice would be forever engraved in my heart. And William and I, in this crisis, also strengthened our faith in each other. Together we would completely destroy James' group and let justice be served. William received the punishment he deserved, and James' group declined because of the scandal. I touched my slightly protruding belly. For the sake of the child, I had to put aside my hatred for the time being. The moment I stepped into the psychological counseling room, I felt as if I had stepped into an unknown territory. The closed door behind me was like a thick barrier, completely isolating me from the hustle and bustle of the outside world. It only left me with those long, entangled and indescribable pains deep in my heart. I dragged my heavy steps, walked in front of the soft sofa, and slowly sat down. My hands involuntarily clutched the corner of my clothes, and my fingertips turned slightly white due to the force. Can I really get rid of those revenge memories that have been haunting me through this hypnosis? This question kept swirling in my heart, like an invisible hand tugging at my heart. The doctor was a middle-aged woman with a kind face. She walked up to me and said softly, "Relax. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. Next, we will try together to go deep into your heart and face those memories that have been troubling you." Her voice had an inexplicable reassuring power that made my originally tense nerves relax a little. I took a deep breath and, following the doctor's instructions, slowly closed my eyes. Imagine yourself in a peaceful space, free from worries and pain, with only a sense of harmony and tranquility. The doctor's voice seemed to come from a distant sky, leading me gradually into an ethereal world. At first, it was pitch black all around, and the silence was terrifying. Suddenly, the scene of my suicide in my previous life flashed in my mind like a horror movie, without any warning. I stood on the edge of a tall building, and the biting cold wind howled past, wildly tearing at my clothes and hair. James' cold and sarcastic words echoed in my ears. Each word was like a sharp blade cutting at my heart. In front of me was a bottomless abyss of despair, and the darkness seemed to be about to engulf me. No, I don't want to go back there. I screamed in the depths of my heart, and the fear and pain made it almost impossible for me to breathe. Just when I was almost drowned in despair, the scene suddenly changed. I saw myself holding the child and slowly walking out of the orphanage gate. The sunlight shone on me, making me feel warm. The child's smile was like the warm sun in spring, instantly piercing through the layers of haze and shining into my cold heart. Is this my child? I murmured to myself, and an unprecedented warmth welled up from the bottom of my heart and quickly spread throughout my body. I could feel the warmth coming from the child's small body. It was the warmth of life and the spark of hope. You see, you are so happy now. You are no longer the person who was completely consumed by hatred. The doctor's voice sounded in my ear at the right moment, like a bright lamplit in the darkness. But those memories of revenge. They are like demons, torturing me all the time. As soon as I close my eyes, those painful pasts will come flooding back, making it impossible for me to breathe, I replied in pain, and my heart was still struggling violently. On one hand, there was this hard-won happiness and peace in front of me, and on the other hand, there was that unforgettable and hard-to-let-go hatred. The memories of revenge are indeed a part of your past experiences, and they have left a deep mark on your life. But you must understand that you now have a brand new life and someone worthy of your life's protection. You have become strong through all the hardships along the way and no longer need to rely on those painful memories to support yourself in moving forward. The doctor's words were like a key, trying to unlock the locked shackles in my heart. I chewed on the doctor's words in my heart, and my thoughts involuntarily drifted back to the past. Once upon a time, all I had in my heart and eyes was revenge, and my life was filled with hatred, losing the ability to feel beautiful things. For the sake of revenge, I was desperate and put myself in danger and pain. And now, I will have my own child, and he is my motivation to live on. There is also William, that partner who has always been by my side during my most difficult times. He has given me trust and support. I have a warm little family, which are all things that I once dreamed of but didn't dare to hope for. I don't want to be bound by the past anymore. I long for true liberation. I want to completely get out of the abyss of hatred and embrace my present life. I bit my lip and said firmly to the doctor, and at the same time, I was making a promise to myself. Very good. You have bravely started to face your heart. From this moment on, when those memories of revenge try to resurface again, you must firmly tell yourself in your heart. You have stepped out of the past, and you have an extremely beautiful present and a future full of hope. You are a brand new you, and those pasts can no longer control your life. The doctor's voice was full of encouragement and expectation, as if injecting a powerful force into me. As the hypnosis went deeper, I felt as if I was going through a long and arduous spiritual journey. In this process, I constantly talked to my past self and fought against those painful memories. Every struggle made me more determined to get rid of the past and welcome a new life. Finally, the hypnosis ended. I slowly opened my eyes, feeling as if I had woken up from a long nightmare. Looking out the window, the sun was shining brightly, the breeze was gently blowing, and the new buds of the sycamore leaves were swaying merrily on the branches. Their tender green color was full of vitality and energy, forming a sharp contrast with the fallen leaves I saw in the clinic. Those new buds were like my newly born Heartagus moment, full of hope and longing. I have become a better me, I said softly. Although my voice was soft, it was full of power. My heart was stilled with peace and relief, as if a huge stone that had been pressing on my heart for years had finally fallen. At this moment, I truly knew that I had really let go of the past and welcomed my own new life. The road ahead might still be full of challenges, but I was no longer afraid because I had the company of love and a brand new me. In the villa on the hilltop, everything was extremely quiet, as if time had stopped for this moment. The restored piano stood quietly in the center of the living room. Exuding a warm luster, it was like an elegant lady waiting to play its glorious music. William and I stood side by side in front of the piano. Our eyes met, and without words, we could understand the countless emotions in each other's hearts. I really didn't expect that we could come this far, I said softly, and my voice gently echoed in this quiet space, with a hint of uncontrollable emotion. My thoughts involuntarily drifted back to those days full of hardships and challenges. Along the way, we had gone through countless storms, and every step had been so difficult. William nodded slightly and looked at me softly. Thinking back on every bit of our acquaintance, from coming together at first for the common goal of bringing down James' group to gradually developing a deep affection through mutual support later. Every moment was like a precious gem embedded deep in my memory. He slowly sat down in front of the piano, and his slender fingers gently rested on the piano keys. With the playing of the first note, the melody of the variation of Ode to Joy poured out like a gurgling stream. That cheerful and passionate rhythm. It seemed to be telling the hardships and victories we had experienced along the way, and it also seemed to be cheering for our happy life at the moment. I stood quietly by the side, closed my eyes, and immersed myself in this wonderful music with all my heart. You know, when I first heard you play this piece, I thought it was an expectation for the future. I opened my eyes, looked at William's focused profile, and said softly, in those dark days, this piece of music was like a beam of light, illuminating my way forward and giving me courage. William stopped playing, turned his head to look at me, and his eyes sparkled with a gentle light. And you are the most dazzling light in my life. His words were like an electric current, instantly hitting my heart and making a warm feeling well up in my heart. In his eyes, I saw an unprecedented firmness and affection. It was a deep dependence and cherishing for each other after going through storms. The music sounded again, and this time I couldn't help but hum along. The singing and the piano music intertwined. Echoing in the villa, it was as if there were only the two of us in the whole world, immersed in this happy atmosphere. With the falling of the last note, the lingering sound curled up, as if leaving a trace of happiness in the air. William stood up, walked to the fireplace, and picked up the share transfer agreement placed beside it. That was a symbol of our victory in the struggle against James' group and also a witness to that painful past. He looked at the agreement in his hand and let out a slight sigh. It's time to let all this go. As he spoke, he slowly threw the agreement into the fireplace. The flames instantly engulfed the agreement, and the orange firelight illuminated our faces. I looked at the dancing flames, and my heart was filled with mixed feelings. Once, for the sake of this agreement and for revenge, I had gone to any lengths and pushed myself to the brink. And now, when everything has settled down, I've realized that what's truly important is not this agreement. Instead, it's the person beside me who has weathered the storms with me and the new life we've created together. You saved the children, and I saved myself. William's voice sounded in my ear, and his words were like a sledgehammer pounding on my heart. I recalled that in the abandoned church, in order to save those children who were used as bargaining chips by James, I had almost exerted all my strength. At that moment, I understood that there were things more worthy of protection in life than revenge. And William, during the process of fighting side by side with me, gradually let go of the obsession in his heart and found his true self. Illuminated by the flames, I seemed to see Isabella engraved on the prison wall by James. That person who had once made me feel extremely painful and angry, now only left me with a trace of faint emotion. James, the person I had once hated deeply, his actions had changed my entire life. But it was also because of him that I met William and had my current life. Let the past be the past. We still have a wonderful future, I turned around and looked at William, my eyes filled with determination and anticipation. The road ahead is still long, and there may be new challenges, but I'm no longer afraid. Because I know that as long as William is by my side, no matter what difficulties we encounter, we can face them together. William gently held my hand, and we walked to the window and looked at the distant mountains. The gentle breeze on the mountain top brushed against our cheeks, bringing a trace of fresh air. The scenery in front of us was picturesque. The afterglow of the setting sun sprinkled on the earth, draping the whole world in a layer of golden gauze. In this beautiful scenery, we stood embracing each other, and our figures were stretched very long and long under the setting sun. "I love you," William whispered in my ear. These 3 words were like the most beautiful vow, lingering in the air for a long time. I hugged him tightly, feeling his warmth and love, and my heart was filled with happiness. At this moment, I knew that all the pain and hardships had become the past, and we had welcomed our own new life. In the days to come, we will accompany each other hand in hand and jointly write our own happy chapter.